Jasmine Washington stands in the aisle of Flight 3217, her flight attendant uniform now replaced by an impeccable business suit. She reveals her real identity as the daughter of Harrison Airline CEO to the shocked crew. "You're all fired," effective immediately, she announces as passengers record the scene. "Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and courage, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you're new here. This journey of undercover investigation is about to take off, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next." Jasmine Washington was not your typical executive. At 30 years old, she had already earned her MBA from Harvard Business School with highest honors and worked her way up to executive vice president at Harrison Airlines. Not because her father owned the company, but because she was brilliant, determined, and passionate about aviation. Her father, Terrell Washington, was the embodiment of the American dream against all odds. A 62-year-old self-made billionaire, he had built Harrison Airlines from a single charter plane into one of the nation's premier carriers. But the journey had been anything but smooth. As one of the few black CEOs in the aviation industry, Terrell had faced discrimination, sabotage, and outright racism throughout his career. "Never forget where we came from, Jasmine," Terrell often reminded his daughter in their weekly strategy meetings at headquarters. "And never forget why we do what we do." Harrison Airlines had built its reputation on two core principles: diversity in hiring and excellence in service. Their company culture had won awards, and their customer satisfaction ratings had been untouchable for nearly a decade. That's why the recent flood of complaints had everyone at corporate baffled. "Dad, look at this," Jasmine said one evening, spreading dozens of complaint forms across Terrell's mahogany desk. "All these came in this month. Something's not adding up." The complaints shared disturbing similarities. Black passengers reported being denied upgrades despite available seats, waiting longer for service, having baggage randomly selected for additional screening, and being spoken to condescendingly by flight attendants. Most troubling, the majority of complaints centered around one particular route, LAX to NYC on Flight 3217. "We've replaced the pilots, changed ground crew, even sent in quality control passengers," Terrell said, rubbing his temples. "Nothing changes." Jasmine paced the office, her mind racing. Then she stopped abruptly, turning to face her father. "I know how to fix this," she said firmly. "I need to go undercover as a flight attendant." Terrell laughed, then realized his daughter was serious. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Dad, we've tried everything else. Something systemic is happening, and we need to see it from the inside." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "This isn't just about business. It's about what Harrison Airlines stands for." The request triggered a memory Terrell had tried to forget. When Jasmine was 16, they had boarded one of their own flights. Terrell had been detained by an urgent call, leaving Jasmine to find her first-class seat alone. Despite her ticket, a flight attendant had repeatedly insisted she must be in economy, questioning how she could afford first class, even after Jasmine showed her boarding pass. It was only when Terrell arrived that the attendant's demeanor changed completely. That night, Jasmine hadn't cried. Instead, she had looked her father in the eye and said, "Someday, I'll make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." After 2 more weeks of escalating complaints and emergency board meetings questioning Terrell's leadership, he finally relented to his daughter's plan, with conditions. 2 months maximum. You check in daily. Malcolm from HR is your only contact at the company, and at the first sign of trouble, you're out. Jasmine agreed, and Project Transparency was set in motion. For the next month, while officially on extended leave visiting potential international partners, Jasmine underwent intensive flight attendant training in a private facility. She learned everything from emergency procedures to drink service, studying harder than she had even at Harvard. Only Terrell and HR Director Malcolm Davis knew her true identity. To everyone else, she would become Jasmine Jones, a new hire with a fabricated employment history and a mission to uncover the truth about Flight 3217. "Are you sure about this?" Malcolm asked during their final briefing. "Your father nearly had a heart attack signing off on this plan." Jasmine looked out the window at the Harrison Airlines fleet gleaming in the sunlight, each plane painted with her family's name. "Those planes don't just carry our name, Malcolm. They carry our values. Something's corrupting that, and I need to cut it out before it spreads." Little did she know just how deep the corruption went, or how dangerous her mission would become. Transforming into Jasmine Jones required more than a name change. Jasmine Washington had been featured in business magazines and industry publications. She couldn't risk being recognized. She dyed her naturally black hair with subtle highlights, wore colored contacts to change her deep brown eyes to hazel, adopted a slight southern accent, and created an elaborate backstory, a former hotel concierge from Atlanta pursuing her dream of seeing the world. "Posture," barked Tanya Brooks, a veteran flight attendant who had been brought in to train the new cohort. "You stand like an executive, not service staff. Round your shoulders, soften your stance." Tanya was tough but fair, treating all trainees equally regardless of background. The same couldn't be said for Keith Spencer, the other trainer who seemed to have a particular disdain for minority trainees. "Jones!" Keith shouted during evacuation drills. "What part of assist passengers before securing your own mask don't you understand? Or is following simple instructions too difficult for you?" Jasmine bit her tongue. As executive VP, she could have had Keith fired on the spot. As trainee Jasmine Jones, she had to lower her eyes and say, "Yes, sir." It won't happen again. The physical demands of training surprised her. Pushing 250-pound carts, remaining standing for 12 hours straight, and memorizing hundreds of procedures while maintaining a perfect smile was exhausting. Each night, she collapsed into bed at the company apartment, too tired even to call her father. "Don't let Spencer get to you," whispered Andre Phillips, another trainee who had noticed Keith's treatment of Jasmine. "He's like that with all of us." Andre, a former teacher with kind eyes and a quiet dignity, became Jasmine's ally during training. Over lunch breaks, he shared stories of microaggressions he'd faced throughout his life. "I applied to Harrison because of your father," Andre told her one day, completely unaware of who he was speaking to. "Terrell Washington changed the industry for people like us. I figured any company he runs must treat people right." Jasmine nearly choked on her sandwich. "You know about Terrell Washington?" Andre looked at her incredulously. "Everyone in the black business community knows about Terrell Washington. Man started with nothing, faced every obstacle possible, and still built an empire. He's a legend." Pride swelled in Jasmine's chest, strengthening her resolve. Her father's legacy deserved protection. Graduation day arrived after 4 grueling weeks. As trainees received their wings, Jasmine noticed something odd. Keith Spencer was having an intense, whispered conversation with 3 senior crew members in the corner. Money appeared to change hands, and Keith pointed subtly toward certain graduates. When assignments were distributed, Jasmine wasn't surprised to find herself placed on the LAX NYC route, Flight 3217, exactly where she wanted to be. What did surprise her was seeing Andre assigned to a completely different route despite his request for the same flight. "It's nothing personal," Keith told Andre with a smirk. "Some routes just require a certain type of attendant." The night before her first flight, Jasmine stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying Jasmine Jones in her crisp new uniform. Doubt crept in. Was she really qualified for this? What if she made a mistake that endangered passengers? What if she was discovered? Her phone rang, her father calling from his secure line. "Baby girl, there's still time to call this off," Terrell said, his voice heavy with concern. "We can find another way." Jasmine straightened her uniform jacket, remembering the 16-year-old girl who had promised to make a difference. "Dad, you didn't build Harrison Airlines by backing down from challenges. Neither will I. After a moment of silence, Terrell replied, "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become." Then, clearing his throat, "Remember your training, trust your instincts, and for God's sake, check in every day." Jasmine promised she would, then hung up and set 3 alarms. Tomorrow, Jasmine Jones would report for her first day as a flight attendant on Harrison Airlines Flight 3217, where she would begin unraveling a mystery that went far deeper than anyone suspected. At 4:30 a.m., Jasmine arrived at LAX for her first briefing, nervous energy pulsing through her veins. The crew lounge buzzed with activity as flight attendants prepared for early departures. She spotted her assigned team gathered around a table and approached with the tentative smile of a newcomer. "You must be Jones," said a statuesque blonde woman with perfect makeup and an air of authority. "I'm Diane Miller, chief flight attendant for this route. Welcome to the A-Team." The rest of the crew introduced themselves: Rachel Thompson, a friendly redhead who immediately offered to show Jasmine the ropes, Benjamin Carter, a quiet man with calculating eyes who barely acknowledged her, and Curtis Reynolds, whose charming smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "First day's always rough," Curtis said, placing a hand on Jasmine's shoulder that lingered a beat too long. "Stick with me, I'll make sure you survive." The flight boarded without incident, but once airborne, Jasmine began noticing subtle patterns. Black passengers were consistently seated toward the back of the plane, even when they had earlier boarding groups. Drink service moved quickly through first class and the front of economy where predominantly white passengers sat, then slowed noticeably when reaching the middle and rear sections. When a black businessman in first class pressed his call button, Jasmine responded promptly. As she walked away after serving him, Diane pulled her aside. "Jones, a word," she said sharply. "We have a service order on this flight. First-class passengers in rows 1 to 2 get priority, then 3 to 4. That gentleman was in row 3. But no one else had their button on," Jasmine replied, confused. "That's not the point. Follow protocol or there will be problems." "Understood." As the flight progressed, Jasmine observed more disturbing behavior. Rachel would chat warmly with certain passengers while giving others nothing more than perfunctory service. Benjamin seemed to make note of which passengers had expensive luggage. And Curtis had an uncanny habit of appearing whenever affluent-looking passengers left their seats, glancing at their belongings with too much interest. During the meal service, Jasmine overheard a conversation between Curtis and Benjamin. "Got 3 PCRs in rows 15 to 18, Curtis murmured. "Standard procedure." Benjamin nodded. Diane already noted it in the system. Jasmine pretended to organize the beverage cart while straining to hear more. "PCRs? What system?" Her questions would have to wait as turbulence interrupted the service. In the galley during a quiet moment, Curtis sidled up to Jasmine. "So, Jones, what made you want to join our little family?" "Travel, meeting new people, the usual," she replied with practiced casualness. Curtis chuckled. "Sure, but the real perks come after you've been around a while." He tapped his wrist, drawing attention to a Rolex that Jasmine recognized as a $15,000 model, far beyond a flight attendant's salary. "Nice watch," she commented. "Perks of the job," he replied with a wink. "Play your cards right, and you'll see there's more to this gig than the paycheck." At the end of the flight, while passengers deplaned, Jasmine noticed Diane reviewing what appeared to be passenger notes on her tablet. Glancing over her shoulder, Jasmine caught sight of a spreadsheet with columns labeled "Comfort Rating" and "Special Handling," neither of which were standard Harrison Airlines protocols. Over the next 3 flights, Jasmine began documenting patterns. The crew used coded language she slowly deciphered. Sunshine passenger meant white, affluent travelers. PCR stood for Passenger Comfort Rating, a system that seemed to rate passengers' desirability based largely on race and perceived wealth. Most disturbing was CB, or Cargo Black, a term used exclusively for black passengers who were consistently given the worst service. After her first week, exhausted and disturbed by what she'd witnessed, Jasmine made her secure daily call to her father from her hotel room. "Dad, it's worse than we thought," she whispered, though she'd already checked for listening devices. "There's a systematic discrimination operation happening right under our noses. But I need more evidence before we can act." "Jasmine, if it's that bad, maybe it's time to pull you out," Terrell responded, his voice tense with concern. "Not yet," Jasmine insisted. "I'm just starting to gain their trust. Give me more time." What she didn't tell her father was how the constant exposure to discrimination was affecting her. Each slight, each coded phrase, each instance of preferential treatment cut deep. But Jasmine Jones had to remain neutral, compliant, even as Jasmine Washington was documenting everything for the reckoning to come. By her second week, Jasmine had begun building rapport with Rachel Thompson, who seemed the most approachable member of the crew. During a layover in New York, Rachel invited her for drinks at the hotel bar. "So what do you think of the team so far?" Rachel asked, sipping her cosmopolitan. "Everyone seems tight-knit," Jasmine replied carefully. Rachel leaned in, lowering her voice. "Look, I can tell you're smart. You've noticed things. That's good, means you're observant. But between us, don't ask too many questions around Diane or Benjamin." "Why not?" Rachel glanced around before answering. "Let's just say this route has its own way of doing things. Been that way for years." After a few more drinks, Rachel became more forthcoming. "You know about the upgrade system, right?" "I've noticed some patterns," Jasmine admitted. "It's not official policy, but it's how things work on 3217. Diane reviews the passenger list before each flight. Certain passengers get flagged for service prioritization or potential upgrades if seats are available." "And how are these passengers selected?" Jasmine asked, already knowing the answer. Rachel shrugged uncomfortably. "It's about maximizing comfort for everyone. Some passengers just fit better in certain sections of the plane." "You mean white passengers get preferential treatment," Jasmine stated bluntly. Rachel nearly choked on her drink. "Jesus, Jones. Keep your voice down." She leaned closer. "Look, I don't make the rules. But if you want to last on this route, you need to play along. What happened after hours in this job? Have you ever worked somewhere with unwritten rules that made you uncomfortable?" Comment number 1: if you've ever witnessed workplace discrimination and had to decide whether to speak up. Hit that like button if you think Jasmine should gather more evidence before confronting the crew. Are you subscribed yet? Don't miss what happens next in this explosive investigation. Now, what do you think is really happening with those checked bags? Let's find out. Over the next few flights, Rachel revealed more pieces of the puzzle. The taxation system particularly horrified Jasmine. Black passengers were routinely charged for blankets, headphones, and premium snacks that were complimentary for others. The extra cash went into a pool that the crew divided at the end of each trip. But the most disturbing revelation came when Jasmine observed Benjamin and Curtis during a transcontinental red-eye flight. While passengers slept, they accessed the cargo hold using a maintenance key. Jasmine followed discreetly, watching as they systematically opened certain checked bags, primarily those belonging to black passengers they'd identified during boarding. "Just a quick taxation," Curtis joked, pocketing a pair of expensive wireless headphones from one bag. "They'll assume they lost them somewhere else." Benjamin removed a small jewelry case from another bag. "Amateurs. Never pack valuables in checked luggage." Jasmine retreated before being discovered, her heart pounding. This wasn't just discrimination, it was organized theft. The next evening, during a 24-hour layover in Los Angeles, Diane invited the entire crew to her suite for drinks. Jasmine arrived to find a lavish spread of food and alcohol that would have cost several days' salary. More shocking were the items displayed like trophies, designer sunglasses, jewelry, electronics, all items taxed from passengers' luggage. "Welcome to the real perks of Flight 3217, Curtis announced, handing Jasmine a glass of champagne. "The most profitable route in the Harrison network." Jasmine struggled to maintain her composure as crew members laughed about particularly memorable taxations, many specifically targeting black passengers with coded racist language. As the night progressed, Diane cornered Jasmine in the kitchen. "You've been observant these past weeks, Jones. A little too observant, perhaps." Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine but maintained her cover. "I'm just trying to learn the ropes. Here's what you need to understand," Diane said, her friendly tone contrasting with the coldness in her eyes. "Our system works because everyone participates. No exceptions, no outsiders, no whistleblowers. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Jasmine replied, forcing a smile. Back in her own hotel room, Jasmine carefully documented everything using the specialized camera pen Malcolm had provided. She transferred the footage to an encrypted drive, but when she reached for her personal phone to make her daily check-in with her father, panic struck. The phone was missing. After frantically searching her room, she remembered using it briefly in the crew lounge to check an authentic-looking but fake email account created for her cover. She must have left it there. Racing down to the now-empty lounge, she found her phone on a chair, but the screen showed it had been unlocked recently. Nearby sat Benjamin, watching her with newfound interest. "Lose something, Jones?" he asked. "Just my phone." "Thanks for finding it," she said, trying to sound casual. "Interesting email you got there. From Harrison Airlines corporate? Something about quarterly reviews?" Jasmine's mind raced. "Oh, that. My cousin works in accounting at headquarters. Keeps me updated on company gossip." Benjamin studied her face. "Funny, I didn't know entry-level accounting had access to executive review schedules." "Corporate gossip travels," Jasmine replied with a shrug. "Probably nothing to it." Benjamin seemed to accept this explanation, but as Jasmine returned to her room, she knew her cover had just become more precarious. She needed to accelerate her investigation before she was exposed. To reinforce her cover after Benjamin's suspicions, Jasmine reluctantly began pretending to participate in the crew's scheme. She would pocket items from the beverage cart or accept cash, tips, from the taxation system, only to return them discreetly when possible or document them as evidence. This apparent complicity earned her greater trust, and soon she was privy to more disturbing aspects of the operation. During a quiet moment in the galley, Curtis showed her how they collected and used passenger credit card information. "When they hand over their cards for duty-free purchases, we swipe twice," he explained, demonstrating with the card reader. "One for the airline, one for our personal database. Small charges to their accounts every few months, never enough to notice. And nobody catches on?" Jasmine asked, disguising her horror as admiration. Curtis smirked. "Been running this system for 3 years. The airline's so big, and management so distant, nobody connects the dots." The mention of 3 years struck Jasmine. The discrimination complaints had started roughly 3 years ago, right when Diane had become chief flight attendant for this route. During another layover, Diane invited Jasmine to her room for what she called a mentor session. After some small talk, Diane revealed how the systematic discrimination had evolved. "Harrison Airlines prides itself on diversity," Diane said with evident disdain. "Terrell Washington built this company catering to people who don't appreciate quality service. We just corrected the balance." "How did it start?" Jasmine asked, recording the conversation with her pen. "Small things at first. Seating arrangements, service priorities. Then we realized there was profit potential. Keith in training helps us identify the right kind of new hires for our routes, and management is too busy counting their diversity points to notice what happens in the air." Jasmine thought about her father, who had fought discrimination his entire life only to have it flourish within his own company. The irony was painful. Has no one from corporate ever caught on? She asked. Diane laughed. There was an internal investigation about 2 years ago. But we have friends in corporate who buried the findings. This operation goes higher than you think, Jones. The revelation that the corruption extended to corporate levels was devastating. Jasmine needed to identify these accomplices before they could be warned about her investigation. A few days later, Jasmine encountered Andre Phillips on a layover. He had been assigned to a different route but was deadheading back to LAX on their flight. "How's 3217 treating you?" he asked when they had a moment alone. "It's educational," Jasmine replied carefully. "What about your route?" Andre's expression darkened. "Same problems everywhere. Certain crews have systems in place. I've been documenting everything." "You have?" Jasmine was startled. "Someone has to stand up for what's right," Andre said simply. "I figured I'd gather enough evidence, then take it straight to Terrell Washington himself if I have to." Jasmine felt a surge of emotion. Here was someone fighting the same battle, without any of her advantages or protection. It strengthened her resolve. To test how widespread the discrimination was, Jasmine arranged for Malcolm to book premium tickets for several black passengers, including professionals and a retired couple. As expected, the crew immediately flagged these passengers for special handling. "PCRs in first class," Diane noted during the pre-flight briefing. "Curtis, handle their bags personally." "Rachel, standard delay protocol for service." Jasmine was assigned to serve the elderly black couple. When the gentleman politely requested a blanket, she provided one immediately. "Jones," Diane hissed later. "What did we discuss about service priorities?" "They were cold," Jasmine replied. "That's not your call to make. One more misstep like that, and we'll have to reconsider your position on this crew." The threat was clear, but Jasmine had nearly reached her breaking point. 3 weeks into her assignment, the constant witnessing of injustice while maintaining her cover was taking an emotional toll. Each night, she called her father with updates, and each night, the conversation became more difficult. "Dad, it's not just a few bad apples," she explained after a particularly difficult flight. "This is organized, systematic discrimination with connections to corporate. We need to identify everyone involved before we act." Terrell's silence spoke volumes. When he finally responded, his voice was heavy with emotion. "I built this airline so people like us would be treated with dignity. To think this has been happening under my nose. We're going to fix this," Jasmine promised. All of it. What she didn't tell him was how personal it had become. This wasn't just about Harrison Airlines anymore. This was about justice for every passenger who had been mistreated, every applicant who had been denied opportunities, and every employee who, like Andre, was trying to do the right thing in a corrupt system. The next day, she received word that her time was running out. The board was pressuring Terrell about the lack of progress in addressing customer complaints. She needed to complete her investigation quickly, before the architects of this discrimination could cover their tracks. As her 4th week undercover began, Jasmine found herself in an increasingly precarious position. Her role as both investigator and unwilling participant in the crew's scheme created constant moral conflict. Each discriminatory act she witnessed or pretended to participate in felt like a betrayal of everything she and her father stood for. Her friendship with Rachel had deepened, revealing complexities Jasmine hadn't anticipated. During a quiet conversation in their hotel room, Rachel confessed the real reason she had joined the corrupt crew. "My mother has multiple sclerosis," Rachel explained, tears welling in her eyes. "Her treatments cost thousands each month. Insurance covers some, but not all. I was drowning in debt when Diane approached me. And that made it okay?" Jasmine asked gently. "No," Rachel admitted. "I tell myself it's just small stuff, a few extra dollars here and there. But I know it's wrong. Every day I think about quitting, but then I get another medical bill. Jasmine felt torn. As Jasmine Washington, Executive VP, she could have arranged proper assistance for Rachel's mother through the company's Employee Emergency Fund. As Jasmine Jones, she could only listen and gather evidence that would likely end Rachel's career. Meanwhile, Curtis had developed a concerning interest in Jasmine. His flirtations had progressed from casual remarks to persistent invitations to his hotel room. Maintaining her cover required a delicate balance of seeming receptive without encouraging him further. "We should celebrate after tomorrow's flight," Curtis suggested, standing too close in the galley. "Just you and me. I have champagne in my room." "Maybe another time," Jasmine deflected. "I've been feeling under the weather." Curtis frowned. "You know, Jones, being part of this team means being friendly. Very friendly." The implied threat was clear. Jasmine was saved from responding when severe turbulence hit, sending both of them grabbing for handrails. As the plane pitched violently, Jasmine instinctively took charge, securing loose items and calming nearby passengers with professional efficiency. When the turbulence subsided, she noticed Diane watching her with narrowed eyes. "Impressive crisis management, Jones," Diane remarked later. "Almost like you've had executive-level emergency training." "I'm a quick study," Jasmine replied, realizing her instincts had betrayed her. She'd responded like an executive, not a novice flight attendant. That night, in her hotel room, Jasmine discovered her cover was unraveling faster than expected. A text from Malcolm warned her that Diane had been investigating Jasmine Jones and requesting information from HR about her background. As if this wasn't concerning enough, Jasmine uncovered yet another layer of the corruption. While reviewing her evidence, she noticed patterns in the passenger manifests. Certain passengers were consistently seated together despite having different booking times. Further investigation revealed the crew was selling passenger information to third parties. Following her suspicions, Jasmine tracked Curtis to a meeting in the hotel bar with a man she didn't recognize. From a discreet distance, she observed Curtis passing over what appeared to be a thumb drive in exchange for an envelope. She photographed the exchange, then slipped away before being noticed. Back in her room, she was preparing to call her father when her secure phone rang first. "We have a problem," Terrell said without preamble. "Board members are asking questions about the internal investigation. Someone tipped them off." "How much do they know?" Jasmine asked, pacing her room. "Not details, but enough to demand results. We need to move quickly. Malcolm says your cover may be compromised." "I'm close, Dad. Give me one more week." "It might not be safe," Jasmine interrupted, "I can handle it. Trust me." After ending the call, Jasmine reviewed her findings. She had documented discrimination, theft, credit card fraud, and information selling, more than enough to justify terminations. But she still hadn't identified the corporate accomplices Diane had mentioned. The next morning brought a new complication. During the pre-flight briefing, Diane announced, "We'll have a corporate representative on today's flight. Routine quality inspection." Jasmine felt her stomach drop when Keith Spencer, her discriminatory trainer, walked into the briefing room. His eyes locked with hers immediately. "Jones," he acknowledged with a knowing smile. "Looking forward to evaluating your performance." The flight departed LAX with Keith observing the crew's every move. Midway through the service, he cornered Jasmine in the galley. "Interesting career trajectory you have," he remarked quietly. "Training to flight attendant in record time. Assigned to our most profitable route immediately. Almost like someone placed you here deliberately." "I go where I'm assigned," Jasmine replied evenly. Keith leaned closer. "Here's what puzzles me. Your background check shows a Jasmine Jones from Atlanta. But when I called that hotel where you supposedly worked as concierge, no record of you." Jasmine maintained her composure. "Clerical error, perhaps." "Perhaps," Keith echoed, unconvinced. "Or perhaps there's more to Jasmine Jones than meets the eye." As he walked away, Jasmine knew her time was running out. Keith's presence was no coincidence. He was here to evaluate whether she was a threat to their operation. The situation deteriorated further when Diane pulled her aside after landing. "We need to talk about your future with this crew," Diane said coldly. "Keith has raised some concerns about your background." "What concerns?" Jasmine asked. "Inconsistencies. Discrepancies. Things that make us question your loyalty." Diane's professional smile didn't reach her eyes. "We've investigated you, Jones. Your story doesn't check out." For the remainder of that trip, the crew's behavior toward Jasmine shifted dramatically. Curtis stopped flirting and started watching. Benjamin barely spoke to her. Even Rachel kept her distance, though her apologetic glances suggested she was acting under orders. During service, Jasmine overheard Curtis and Benjamin discussing her in hushed tones. "Diane says we need to take care of the problem before the next rotation," Curtis murmured. "Keith thinks she might be from corporate," Benjamin replied. "If she's gathering evidence." "Then we make sure there is no evidence," Curtis finished ominously. "And no witness." That night, at the layover hotel, Jasmine double-checked her door locks and placed an improvised alarm, a glass balanced on the doorknob. Her precaution proved prescient when, around 2 a.m., she heard a faint scratching at her door. The glass trembled, then fell with a crash. Immediately alert, Jasmine grabbed her evidence and slipped into the bathroom just as her door opened. Through the crack, she saw Curtis and Benjamin enter her room. They moved methodically, searching through her belongings. "Find her phone and laptop," Curtis instructed. "She has to be recording this somehow." Jasmine quietly climbed into the bathtub and pried open the small window. It would be a tight squeeze, but the fire escape was just outside. As the men approached the bathroom door, she slipped through the window and onto the metal landing, still clutching her evidence drive. She made her way down the fire escape and to the hotel lobby, where she used a house phone to call her father's secure line. "They're on to me," she said without preamble. "They just broke into my room." "Get out now," Terrell ordered, his voice tight with fear. "I'm sending Malcolm with security. Meet them at the secondary location we discussed." "Dad, they took my evidence," Jasmine said, then corrected herself. "Some of it. I have backups, but not everything. Forget the evidence. Your safety is what matters." But Jasmine wasn't ready to abandon her mission. "No. We're too close. If I leave now, they'll destroy everything and warn their corporate accomplices. This has to end on the next flight." After a long pause, Terrell replied, "You're just like your mother. Stubborn as hell when you're right." "Then, more seriously, what's your plan?" Jasmine looked toward the elevators where Curtis and Benjamin were emerging, scanning the lobby. She ducked behind a pillar. "I'll call you back," she whispered, ending the call. For the next few hours, Jasmine evaded the searching crew members, moving between public areas of the hotel where they wouldn't make a scene. By morning, she had formulated a plan, one final flight where all would be revealed, no matter the risk. The crew assembled for their pre-flight briefing the next morning, tension thick in the air. Jasmine arrived last, feeling every eye on her as she took her seat. She had managed to retrieve some of her belongings from her room after Curtis and Benjamin had left, but they had taken her laptop and some of her notes. Keith Spencer sat beside Diane, both watching Jasmine with barely concealed hostility. The briefing proceeded with forced normalcy, assignments distributed as usual. Jasmine was paired with Curtis for the main cabin service, an obvious attempt to keep her under surveillance. As the briefing concluded, Keith approached her. "A word, Jones," he requested, though it wasn't really a request. In a quiet corner of the crew lounge, Keith dropped all pretense. "I know who you are," he said flatly. Jasmine maintained her cover. "I'm not sure what you mean. Let's stop playing games. You're not Jasmine Jones from Atlanta." The question is, who are you really? Corporate security? FAA investigator? He leaned closer. Whoever you are, you're making a serious mistake. This operation has powerful protection. Is that a threat? Jasmine asked. Keith smiled thinly. Consider it career advice. There are two types of people in this world, Jones, or whatever your name is. Those who understand how the game is played and profit from it, and those who fight the system and get crushed by it. And which type are you? The type who survives, Keith replied coldly. Which is more than I can say for you if you continue down this path. He walked away, leaving the threat hanging in the air. Jasmine took a deep breath, steeling herself for what would be the most dangerous flight of her life. Boarding proceeded normally, but Jasmine noticed Diane had assigned her to work the rear galley, isolated from passengers and easy to corner. As passengers settled in, Diane pulled her aside. I've completed my investigation into your background, she said without preamble. Jasmine Jones doesn't exist, at least not the version of her you're pretending to be. I don't know what you're talking about, Jasmine maintained. Save it, Diane snapped. You're done after this flight. The only question is whether you walk away quietly or become a problem that needs solving. For your sake, I suggest the former. The threat couldn't have been clearer. As the flight progressed, Jasmine found herself isolated and watched. Curtis, accidentally, bumped into her several times, each collision more aggressive than the last. Benjamin monitored her constantly, reporting her movements to Diane via crew phone. Even Rachel avoided eye contact, fear evident in her posture. Midway through the flight, while most passengers were watching movies or sleeping, Jasmine was summoned to the forward galley where Diane and Keith waited. Your services won't be needed for the remainder of this flight, Diane informed her. You'll stay in the crew rest area until we land. On what grounds? Jasmine challenged. Insubordination, suspicious behavior, and falsification of employment credentials, Keith listed smugly. Unless you want to tell us who you really are and who you're working for. Jasmine weighed her options. Her cover was blown, but they didn't seem certain of her actual identity. If they knew she was Terrell Washington's daughter, their approach would likely be different. I'm just trying to do my job, she insisted. Your job seems to involve a lot of documentation, Diane retorted. Curtis found your little camera pen when he searched your room. Not standard flight attendant equipment, is it? Jasmine felt a chill. They had discovered one of her recording devices. How much else did they know? We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Keith continued. The easy way, you tell us everything, turn over all your evidence, and maybe you walk away intact. The hard way. He left the sentence unfinished. Are you threatening me? Jasmine asked, loud enough that a nearby passenger glanced over. Keith lowered his voice. Keep it down. This is a private matter. Is assaulting crew members a private matter too? Jasmine challenged. No one's assaulting anyone, Diane hissed. Yet. Before the situation could escalate further, turbulence rocked the plane, sending everyone grabbing for handholds. The captain announced they were entering an unexpected storm system and all crew should be seated. The interruption gave Jasmine a momentary reprieve. She returned to her jump seat, mind racing. Her original plan had been to gather final evidence during this flight, then reveal herself upon landing with Malcolm and security waiting. Now she needed to survive the flight first. During a bathroom break, Jasmine managed to send a coded text to Malcolm, package compromised. Expedite extraction. Full team needed. It was their prearranged signal that her cover was blown and she needed immediate assistance upon landing. The response came quickly, understood. Security in place. Maintain position. For the remainder of the flight, Jasmine kept to well-populated areas of the cabin. Whatever Diane and her accomplices planned, they wouldn't risk acting with too many witnesses. The strategy worked until the plane began its descent into LAX. "Jones, prepare the rear galley for landing," Diane ordered over the crew phone. Jasmine knew it was a trap. The rear galley was isolated, especially during landing preparation when passengers were required to be seated. But refusing a direct order would create a scene. "On my way," she responded, then slipped her phone into record mode before heading to the rear. As expected, Curtis was waiting for her. "Need help back here?" he offered with false friendliness. "I've got it covered," Jasmine replied, keeping the galley cart between them. "You know, you've caused a lot of trouble," Curtis said, his friendly facade dropping. "Made a lot of people nervous. People who don't like feeling nervous." "I'm just doing my job," Jasmine repeated. "No, you're not. Not the job you were hired for, anyway." Curtis moved around the cart. "The question is, who are you working for? The FAA? Some rival airline trying to damage Harrison's reputation?" Jasmine kept moving, maintaining distance. "You should return to your jump seat. We're landing soon. Not until we clear something up." Curtis lunged suddenly, grabbing her arm. "Whatever evidence you think you have disappears today, understand? Otherwise, accidents happen. Flight attendants miss steps on jet bridges. Luggage falls from overhead bins." Jasmine had trained in self-defense, a precaution her father had insisted on for his daughter in a leadership position. With a swift movement, she broke Curtis's grip and pushed him back. "Touch me again and I'll have you arrested the moment we land," she warned. Curtis's expression darkened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," Jasmine replied, "I think it's you who has no idea who you're dealing with." The plane touched down before Curtis could respond. As they taxied to the gate, Diane's voice came over the crew phone, "Jones, report to the front galley immediately." Jasmine made her way forward, aware that this confrontation would determine everything. In the front galley, Diane and Keith waited with Benjamin. The trap was set. "Before we deplane, we need to resolve this situation," Diane stated coldly. "What situation is that?" Jasmine asked, buying time. Through the cockpit door window, she could see they were approaching the gate. "Your unauthorized investigation ends now," Keith said. "Hand over all recording devices and evidence immediately." "And if I refuse?" "Then this becomes very unpleasant for you," Benjamin threatened. "We have connections throughout this airport. Security, customs, police. One word from us, and you'll be detained on suspicion of smuggling. By the time you're cleared, any evidence you've gathered will have mysteriously disappeared." The plane came to a stop at the gate. The seatbelt sign dinged off. "Last chance," Diane warned. "Surrender everything now." Jasmine smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. "I don't think so." The cabin door opened, and instead of the usual gate agent, Malcolm Davis stepped aboard flanked by Harrison Airline security personnel. "What's going on?" Diane demanded. "Who authorized this?" Malcolm nodded to Jasmine. "Ms. Washington, are you ready to proceed?" The color drained from Diane, Keith, and Benjamin's faces as the truth dawned on them. "Washington?" Keith whispered. "As in?" "Terrell Washington's daughter," Jasmine confirmed, straightening to her full height, no longer playing the role of subordinate flight attendant. "And yes, Malcolm, I believe we have everything we need." The shock that registered on the faces of Diane, Keith, and Benjamin was almost worth the weeks of undercover work. Curtis emerged from the back, confusion turning to horror as he realized what was happening. "You're Terrell Washington's daughter," he repeated incredulously. "Executive Vice President Jasmine Washington," Malcolm confirmed, his typically mild-mannered HR demeanor replaced with cold professionalism. "Who has been conducting an authorized internal investigation into discriminatory practices and criminal activity on this route." Diane recovered first, her expression hardening. "This is ridiculous. You have no evidence of wrongdoing. Actually, Jasmine replied, I have 4 weeks of documented evidence. Discrimination, theft, credit card fraud, selling passenger information, all captured in extensive detail. Your word against ours, Keith challenged, though his confidence was clearly shaken. And any recordings made without consent are inadmissible. That would be true, Malcolm agreed, if this were a criminal court. But for an internal company investigation resulting in termination? Different standards apply. Jasmine glanced at her watch. The confrontation was unfolding exactly as planned, but there was one more piece to put in place. Malcolm, please escort these 4 to the jet bridge for processing. I need a moment to address the flight crew and passengers. As security led the protesting crew members off the aircraft, Jasmine took the cabin intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. There's been a security situation that requires your cooperation for just a few more minutes. She then turned to the remaining flight attendants, who stood watching in confusion. For those who weren't involved in the scheme, I apologize for the deception. An announcement will be made shortly explaining the situation. Rachel approached hesitantly. Jasmine. I don't know what to say. We'll talk later, Jasmine assured her. Right now, I need your help. While passengers murmured curiously in their seats, Jasmine implemented the final phase of her plan. She had prepared for this moment meticulously, determined to expose the entire operation in one definitive strike. Using Rachel's help, she gathered the remaining crew in the forward galley and quickly explained the situation. Most expressed shock and dismay, though a few seemed unsurprised by the revelations about their colleagues. I need you all to continue normal deplaning procedures when we're ready, Jasmine instructed. But first, there's something I need to do. Returning to her carry-on bag, which security had brought aboard, Jasmine changed from her flight attendant uniform into the business suit she had packed for this moment. As she emerged transformed, several passengers gasped in recognition. Her face had been featured in business magazines and company communications. Jasmine turned to Malcolm, who had returned from the jet bridge. Are they secure? Security has them in the holding room, Malcolm confirmed. But Diane is already threatening lawsuits and claiming corporate protection. Exactly as expected, Jasmine nodded. And our other arrangements? All in place, Malcolm assured her. Operation Clean Sweep is activated across all suspected routes simultaneously. Security teams are in position at every destination. During the pre-flight briefing that morning, Jasmine had noticed several of the regular crew members had been replaced with unfamiliar faces. What Diane hadn't known was that these replacement crew were actually Harrison Airline security personnel, placed strategically to observe and document the discrimination in real time. Throughout the flight, these undercover agents had witnessed everything: the coded language, the discriminatory service, Curtis and Benjamin's baggage theft preparations, and finally, the threats against Jasmine herself. Now, they emerged from their positions, identifying themselves to the stunned remaining crew members. One of them handed Jasmine a tablet showing live feeds from other flights where similar operations were unfolding simultaneously. 10 flights, all suspected of running similar schemes, the security officer explained. All being shut down right now. Jasmine turned to the intercom once more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jasmine Washington, Executive Vice President of Harrison Airlines. I apologize for the delay in deplaning. In a moment, we'll begin the normal process, but first, I want to address something important. She paused, looking out at the sea of curious faces. For several weeks, I've been working undercover as a flight attendant on this route to investigate serious allegations of discrimination and criminal activity. Today, that investigation has concluded with the removal of those responsible. Murmurs spread through the cabin as passengers processed this information. Harrison Airlines was founded on principles of equality, respect, and exceptional service for all passengers. The activities uncovered on this route violated everything we stand for. To any passenger who experienced discrimination or mistreatment, I offer our deepest apologies. Please know that those responsible are being held accountable, and we are implementing immediate changes to ensure this never happens again. As she spoke, Jasmine noticed several black passengers nodding in recognition or wiping away tears. One elderly gentleman, a retired judge who had been subjected to particularly poor service, gave her a solemn salute. As you deplane, representatives will be available to address any concerns or experiences you wish to share. Thank you for your patience and understanding. With that, the normal deplaning process began. But as passengers filed out, many stopped to speak with Jasmine, sharing their experiences on this and previous flights. Security personnel documented each account, building an even stronger case. Malcolm approached as the last passengers were leaving. "The FBI is here," he informed her quietly. "The credit card fraud and theft cross state lines, making this a federal case." Jasmine nodded grimly. "Have them meet us in the conference room. And make sure all evidence is properly secured." As they walked through the terminal, Jasmine spotted Rachel sitting alone, looking lost. She gestured for Malcolm to continue without her and approached her former colleague. "I'm sorry," Rachel said immediately, tears streaming down her face. "I knew it was wrong, but my mother—" "I know about your mother's MS," Jasmine interrupted gently. "Why didn't you apply to the Employee Emergency Assistance Program?" Rachel looked confused. "The what?" "Harrison Airlines has a fund specifically for employees facing medical hardships. It provides grants, not loans, for exactly these situations." I didn't know," Rachel admitted. "Diane said the company wouldn't care about someone like me." Jasmine felt a fresh wave of anger toward Diane and her accomplices. They hadn't just corrupted the system, they had deliberately kept their colleagues ignorant of legitimate resources that could have prevented their participation in the scheme. "Come with me," Jasmine offered. "Tell the investigators everything, and I'll personally review your mother's case for assistance." Rachel hesitated. "After what I did, you'd still help?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," Jasmine replied. "Especially those who were manipulated when vulnerable." As they walked toward the conference room where the FBI waited, Jasmine reflected on how this investigation had revealed not just corruption, but systemic failures in communication and support that had allowed the corruption to flourish. Those would need to be addressed just as urgently as the criminal activity itself. The final confrontation with Diane, Keith, Curtis, and Benjamin awaited, along with the identification of their corporate accomplices. But Jasmine was ready. After weeks of playing a role, of swallowing her outrage at the injustices she witnessed, she could finally bring everything into the light. "Let's finish this," she said to Malcolm as they reached the conference room door. Inside, the architects of the discrimination scheme were about to face justice, and Harrison Airlines was about to begin the difficult but necessary process of redemption. The conference room fell silent as Jasmine entered. Diane, Keith, Curtis, and Benjamin sat on one side of the long table, their expressions ranging from defiant to terrified. FBI agents stood nearby, while Harrison Airlines security personnel guarded the door. "Ms. Miller, Mr. Spencer, Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Carter," Jasmine addressed them formally, setting her evidence folders on the table. "Before we proceed with formal charges, I want to give you one opportunity to cooperate fully." "This is absurd," Diane protested. "You conducted an unauthorized witch hunt using deception and invasion of privacy. Any evidence you collected is tainted and inadmissible." "Actually," one of the FBI agents interjected, "the evidence was collected as part of an internal corporate investigation, which is perfectly legal. And once we discovered federal crimes were being committed, we obtained warrants for everything else." Keith leaned forward. "You don't understand who you're dealing with. We have protection at the highest levels of your company." "That's exactly what we're counting on you to reveal," Jasmine replied calmly. "Names, positions, extent of involvement, all of it." Curtis, always the opportunist, recognized the shifting winds. "I want immunity," he blurted out. "I can tell you everything, who authorized the system, who took cuts, all of it." "Shut up, Curtis," Diane hissed. But Curtis continued desperately, "It wasn't just us. VP of Operations James Winters approved everything. He gets 15% of all proceeds in exchange for burying complaints and ensuring we keep our routes." The name confirmed Jasmine's suspicions. James Winters had been a longtime adversary of her father, repeatedly opposing Terrell's diversity initiatives while presenting a supportive face publicly. "Anyone else?" Jasmine pressed. Regional Director Patricia Chen, Curtis continued, ignoring Diane's murderous glare. "She handles crew assignments, making sure only compatible personnel work our routes. And Head of Customer Relations Robert Maxwell destroys complaint records before they reach executive level." Jasmine nodded to Malcolm, who made notes and immediately stepped out to phone security at headquarters. The corporate accomplices would be detained before they could destroy evidence. Benjamin, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "What happens to us?" "That depends partially on your cooperation," the FBI agent explained. "Credit card fraud across state lines is a federal offense with mandatory minimum sentences. Theft from interstate carriers is another federal charge. Then there's conspiracy, racial discrimination under federal transportation laws." The color drained from Benjamin's face as the agent continued listing charges. Rachel was brought in next to give her statement. Trembling but determined, she detailed everything she knew about the operation, from its beginnings 3 years ago to the specific coded language used to target black passengers. "Diane told us it was standard industry practice," Rachel explained. "That all airlines did it, just quietly. When I expressed concerns, she showed me her designer apartment, her car, said it could all be mine if I played along." As Rachel spoke, Jasmine addressed the entire flight crew that had been assembled in an adjacent room, now watching via video conference. She wanted them to hear the truth directly. "What you've witnessed today is the dismantling of a system that violated everything Harrison Airline stands for," Jasmine told them. "But this is not just about punishing wrongdoing. It's about recommitting to our founding principles and ensuring nothing like this ever happens again." She outlined immediate changes: new anti-discrimination protocols, anonymous reporting systems, regular undercover quality control, and direct executive oversight of customer complaints. Most importantly, she concluded, "We're establishing a passenger advocacy department to ensure every traveler receives the respect and service they deserve, regardless of race, gender, or background." By the time Jasmine left the airport that evening, Diane, Keith, Curtis, and Benjamin had been formally arrested by FBI agents. At corporate headquarters, security teams were escorting James Winters, Patricia Chen, and Robert Maxwell from the building, their computers and files seized as evidence. 3 months later, Jasmine stood beside her father at a company-wide town hall meeting. The intervening weeks had been challenging but transformative for Harrison Airlines. The scandal had initially damaged their reputation, but their swift, transparent response had ultimately strengthened public trust. "Today marks a new chapter for our company," Terrell Washington announced to thousands of employees gathered in person and virtually. "The recent events forced us to look hard at where we failed to live up to our ideals. But in that painful examination, we found our way back to our founding purpose." He outlined the comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols now being implemented across the airline, the retraining of all staff, and the creation of the new passenger advocacy department. "And to lead this critical initiative," Terrell continued, "I'm pleased to introduce Andre Phillips." Andre, the former flight attendant trainee who had independently documented discrimination, stepped forward to thunderous applause. His courage in standing up for passengers without any protection or authority had earned him universal respect. "Mr. Washington gave me a chance when no one else would," Andre addressed the crowd. "Now we're going to make sure every passenger has that same opportunity for fair treatment." Rachel Thompson was also present, now working in the newly created corporate compliance team. After cooperating fully with investigators and showing genuine remorse, she had been given a second chance. along with proper assistance for her mother's medical needs. As for Jasmine, the experience had deepened her commitment to her father's vision. When Terrell announced his intention to step back from day-to-day operations, the board unanimously approved Jasmine as his successor. The true test of leadership, Terrell told his daughter privately, isn't avoiding mistakes, it's how you respond when those mistakes are revealed. You've shown everyone exactly what kind of leader you are. 6 months after her undercover assignment, Jasmine found herself walking through the cabin of a Harrison Airlines flight, now as the incoming CEO. She stopped to help an elderly black woman stow her bag, then chatted with a young family about their vacation plans. As she made her way through the plane, she noticed something that brought tears to her eyes: crew members providing attentive, respectful service to every passenger, regardless of appearance or seating assignment. The elderly judge who had saluted her that fateful day was back, this time receiving first-class treatment in economy. "Ms. Washington," he acknowledged with a warm smile. "Looks like your father's airline is back on course." "It is," she agreed. "And we're going to make sure it stays that way." When the plane reached cruising altitude, Jasmine addressed the passengers via intercom, something she now did regularly on flights. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jasmine Washington, CEO of Harrison Airlines. I'm traveling with you today to ensure we're delivering the experience every passenger deserves. My father built this airline on a simple principle, that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect when they fly with us. Today, I reaffirm that commitment to each of you." As she returned the handset, a flight attendant approached her. "Ms. Washington, there's something I think you should see." The attendant led her to the galley where crew members had posted a simple pledge, now standard on every Harrison aircraft, every passenger, every flight. Equal respect, equal service, equal dignity. It wasn't just words on a wall. It was a promise being kept, flight after flight, by people who had learned the hardest way possible that justice demanded nothing less. Jasmine Washington's journey teaches us that true leadership requires courage to confront uncomfortable truths. By going undercover, she exposed not just individual bad actors, but a systemic failure that had corrupted her father's vision from within. This story reminds us that discrimination often thrives not because of overt hatred, but through silent complicity, twisted incentives, and leadership blind spots. When institutions fail to self-examine and create accountability systems, corruption finds fertile ground. Jasmine succeeded because she was willing to experience discrimination firsthand rather than viewing it abstractly through reports and statistics. Her approach combined both accountability and compassion, holding wrongdoers responsible while recognizing that some, like Rachel, were victims of circumstance. The transformation of Harrison Airlines demonstrates that meaningful change requires both decisive action against wrongdoing and structural reforms that address root causes. By creating new departments, communication channels, and oversight mechanisms, they ensured the problem wouldn't simply resurface elsewhere. Perhaps most importantly, this story shows that one person's determination can ripple outward, inspiring others like Andre to stand up for what's right. When we witness injustice, we always have a choice: remain silent for comfort's sake, or speak up and catalyze change. What would you have done in Jasmine's position? Have you ever witnessed discrimination and had to decide whether to speak up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful content that explores important social issues. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement to stand up against injustice in their own life. Thank you for watching, and remember, your courage today could change someone's tomorrow. Stay strong, stay compassionate, and never stop fighting for equality.